ultimately people want to be seen and heard and understood. And a great way, and I think this is in Nonviolent Communication where he talks about active listening. You tell me, I want to lose 20 pounds because I don't feel confident. And then you say, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to lose 20 pounds and you want to feel more confident. And you said before, you feel like your nutrition, isn't on point and all this stuff. And you just repeat everything they said. And then what you're not doing is making up any stories. You give them the chance to, and then you ask, does all that sound accurate? Does all that sound correct? And you give them the chance to fill in the gaps or to correct you so that now you're on the same page. And now they're feeling seen, heard, and understood. And now they feel like you're someone to trust.
Welcome to Modern Happiness, where we believe happiness is a choice. Our goal is to share how we and our high-performing guests choose happiness, covering topics such as fitness, mindset, relationships, business, and much more in today's world. Here are your hosts, Matt Mahalik and Taylor Sleaford.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Modern Happiness. Taylor, do you know what day it is?
Best day of the year.
It's the best day of the year. Nailed it, as always.
Why is it the best day of the year, Matt? For the people, if they haven't caught on yet.
Oh, we're here. We're alive. Every day is better than the next. I don't know if I even knew how to answer that question, but I just know that it is the best day of the year.
Yeah. It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
And we get the reps in every day. It gets better.
That's right.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunity. So, Taylor, how's your day going, man? It's Sunday. We've having some pretty nice weather out here in Colorado. How you feeling?
I'm having a great day. It's a great Sunday. I went for a long walk, got coffee, got a little brekkie sandwich, and I'm hurting pretty bad.
Yeah. You've been taking
definitely
you're in the quarterfinals for the CrossFit Games Open, whatever you call it now.
Yeah. Definitely have rhabdo.
Yeah.
For sure. 100%. Did 150 GHD sit-ups on Thursday, plus like 3 workouts, and I haven't done GHD sit-ups in a long time. And I've never hurt this bad in my core, like literally in my being. I couldn't sleep last night because I was in so much pain. And you've seen it, me walking around.
I was gonna say Taylor walked over the garbage, and when I got here, and he was sitting down, he hadn't stood up yet. He walked over to the garbage. He's walking like an old man, like 95 years old. Scoliosis.
It's like, this is one of the worst things. Like when your muscle soreness is so bad that it's just like painful.
Yeah. You said rhabdo, you said GHD. Do we need to explain what this is to people, or do we just move on?
Oh man. Yeah. GHD sit-ups. It's a core movement.
Yeah.
Is a simple way. And rhabdo stands for rhabdomyolysis. Essentially it's, when you overtrain. So it's really common with like endurance athletes, triathletes, marathon runners, and then also CrossFit. When you overdo it, and your muscles break down so much, there's actually, I can't remember the exact chemical, but basically your kidneys try to filter it out of your muscles. And long story short, it can lead to death in severe cases. I've got a minor case for sure, because first sign is like your urine gets really, really dark, like brown, which is not happening.
Yes.
I know you were curious.
Good. I know. Well, I'll drive you to the hospital if you need.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be there if, so I don't do a lot of GHD sit-ups. Essentially CrossFit, high volume is where it's common. People who haven't worked out go 0 to 100 real fast, but this is a new experience for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's me, Matt. How are you?
I am so good, dude. I'm so good. I had baseball this morning, which is so funny. Every time I tell someone, I'm like, yeah, I play baseball in a summer league. And they're like, oh, like softball. I'm like, okay, what did I just say? I said baseball. So every time I say I play baseball, I have to explain this is a men's league, wooden bats, like overhand pitching, like it's baseball.
It's so interesting because you are being accurate with your language.
Yeah.
And yet
nobody wants to listen to it. Same thing happens when I say, how do you pronounce your last name? I'm like, Mahalik. And they're like, Mikulik? I'm like, what the fuck did I just say? Is anyone listening to me? But yeah, dude, I played baseball. I got a RBI single. I pitched for 2 innings, got 2 strikeouts. Also got a 3-run home run hit off me. But it's first game. It's April. I'm just finding that groove. We got a new young catcher on the team, and he's like, do you know how fast you throw? I'm like, no, not sure. He's like, I gotta say it's in the 80s, and I'm like, hell yeah, that makes me feel really good. I'm like, I was like maybe upper 70s, but. Yeah, it feels good and to throw hard, and it felt good today. Besides my ankle, which is a whole other topic, And then I'm like, baseball ended, and I'm like, cool. Now I get to go do a podcast with Taylor, and I'm so excited. And by the way, we got a new producer.
Yeah, we've got
over here.
3 people here today.
We got Maddie. She is our new producer, helping out with all the things, big ideas, and even just the little things like helping us set up the equipment and all that stuff. So we're so excited to have Maddie over here.
The modern happiness rocket ship just got a little bigger.
It certainly did. There's 3 windows.
Big things coming.
That's right.
3 windows.
I just picture the rocket ship, and it's like, those circular.
Yeah.
Like.
See, I was thinking like Star Wars. We've got this big, giant like.
I mean, yeah, we're in like a SpaceX rocket, so we got giant windows.
Awesome, Matt. So I think we should just dive right in because you really led off really well with our topic today of communication.
That's what I do, baby.
And you didn't even know it. That's how great it was.
Yeah. Or did I?
Did you?
No.
Just chatting. Do you even know what I'm talking about at this point?
I got a beer in my hand, dude. I'm just chatting, having a good time.
Yeah, you mentioned you play baseball, and people are like, oh, yeah, like softball? And it's like, no, I said baseball. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk about communication. It's interesting. It's come up a lot. It's come up a lot with my clients recently. I know it's come up with your clients.
It always comes up with my clients.
But that's a great example of there's so many different reasons why communication does not work out as it could or should maybe. And we want to break that down and talk about maybe why that is and also some tips to get better. But I think it's interesting that example you gave of, you telling someone I play baseball and they automatically assume something else. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Dude, I honestly don't know how to answer your question right now. It seems like people have a story in their head and they want to hear what's going to fit that story. And they don't talk to a lot of people who are playing baseball. But they have plenty of friends who play co-ed softball and stuff. So that's what they're used to. So that's what they just are like, oh, he means softball. When, no, it's not what I meant.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, man, I don't know if we need to dive into this yet. We could circle around, but because you said it, there's something I teach in my course called Notice, Imagine, Feel, which I'm sure we'll get to, people create this story. And I love what you said because the imagine part of that is literally we imagine things. We create stories to make sense of what's happening outside of us for what's going on inside of us. So it's like, I think you hit the nail on the head that you are 30 years old and they know that you're not a baseball player for a living and you say baseball. So yeah, the Mets will be calling anytime now.
You know what? My buddy on the team just said, you keep wearing that Mets hat, the Mets will be calling anytime.
Oh, is that all it takes?
So that's all. Yeah.
Wow.
It's to play a local Denver league, and soon enough you're playing the majors.
We should make a movie.
Bada bing,
should get
bada boom.
Some documentary going
it's
right
like
now.
That Dennis Quaid movie. Do you remember that one?
40 Dennis Quaid?
Isn't it Dennis Quaid?
I don't think so, but I think I know what you're talking about.
He's like the high school.
He played for the Rays?
He's like the high school math teacher, and this is like the movie that they made about a guy. It wasn't. Dennis Quaid didn't actually play baseball. I'm talking about the movie.
Yeah, I don't think it was Dennis Quaid, though.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't actually know.
This is not that important to it.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is Dennis Quaid.
Oh, look at that.
Nailed it. Yeah, so anyways, going back to the stories, they look at you, 30 years old, you do a bunch of other things. They're like, oh, clearly he can't play baseball. I know he said baseball, but like he must not mean baseball.
Can't play baseball.
No,
ouch.
This is the story they're creating, right?
Yeah.
And they assume, oh, he must mean softball because that makes more sense, and it's right. So this is fascinating. Talking about communication, why do you think it is? Or maybe should we define, what we would consider good communication?
Well, you know what I think is funny? Yeah, we can definitely define that. I think it's funny that I bet you everyone listening says, I'm good at communicating. I'm a good communicator.
We should take a poll.
We should take a poll.
On Instagram for sure.
Are you a good communicator? And I bet it'd be like, 10 to 1, 9 to 1.
On a scale of 1 to 20.
Scale of 1 to 20.
20 being the best communicator.
Yeah, and then someone says a 16, and then you're like, oh, that's basically an 8 out of a 10. Or 4 out of 5. All right, this is a little personal jab at Taylor because he loves the scale of 20. I think it's great, but
it's more accurate.
It's more accurate. But the truth is that we can't all be great communicators, right? Otherwise, probably you'd have a lot more things going right in your life. There was actually So my ex-wife, Livy, we used to pride ourselves on being good at communicating. In retrospect, and we've talked about this, we're actually good at communicating in the moment. It's like, oh, we feel certain emotions. Now let's talk about that. And then like, oh, maybe here are ways that we can fix that so this doesn't happen again. But we weren't good at communicating, I guess, really how to future-proof against that. Or, what does it look like to, I don't know, maybe talk more about the future. We were very in the moment, but we're like, we're great communicators. Like, we talk about our feelings and stuff. But we never talked about, I guess, like, what do you want for the future? Like, I think a big thing that went on with us, and we had problems, well before we moved to Colorado, but when I leaned into photography and videography, and I was like, I need to make more videos so I can show people I can do this. And I just kind of like assumed she would know that. So like we go on a walk with our dog, National Hike Day, and it's like I'm making her walk by the camera 4 times. All she wants to do is go enjoy nature. And I'm like, we walk by again. Okay, like put Lambo on the left of your side. And I'm like, oh, like I'm going to run up ahead and get this shot and all this stuff. And she's like, can't we just enjoy this damn hike? And, that turned into a problem. It was like, if I communicated that, like, I just assumed, right? I'm like, but if I said, hey, my goal is to be this, videographer who's working for Nike and REI and all this stuff. And what that's going to take is 3 years of me just like filming a lot and making a lot of videos and not sitting on the couch with you at 8 a.m. and watching The Office for the 100th time, but sitting behind my office or at my desk and making videos. And if I was more clear and been like, that's the plan, are you okay with this? Are you okay to go along this ride with me? And if not, well, let's have that conversation.
This is so good. There's a couple of thoughts that came to mind as you were talking about it. The first is there's levels to this shit. There's levels to communication. I think that's one of the problems that people look at it as like a one-way street. And it's like you said, it's like there were areas that you were really good at communicating, and then there were areas that you could improve on. And I think also when it comes to communication, there's kind of 2 main ways. One is like how you respond to receiving information, and you got to take responsibility for that. And then it's also like what you choose to take responsibility for communicating yourself, like, and voicing. And that example you gave of, voicing your thoughts, and like the amount of times, I guarantee anybody listening right now, you've thought something and you assume somebody else was on the same page. Yeah. And then when that doesn't happen, it's funny because that example you gave with your ex, I actually had a client this week who, talked about something going on with him and his wife, and they've been together for a really long time, and it wasn't like this huge negative thing by any means. I'm not going to dive into it because it's personal, but he was like, yeah, it's just good to know that, like, even though I think I know her and I think like I know exactly what she's thinking and feeling, it's like sometimes I miss the boat. I was like, that's a great observation, and like that'll help you going forward. And it's like, I think that a lot of people believe that the deeper level of intimacy, and that could be in a relationship or a friendship or in a business partnership, the less you need to communicate.
Yeah.
They think that like, oh no, we know each other so well. And it's like, couldn't be more wrong.
Yeah. I love what you said about that, like with his wife, and great awareness for him to be like, I think that's the thing. It's like, after a conversation, where could I have done better? And a lot of times we tend to assume like that person's just an asshole. Like they must be uptight. Fucking that girl's on her period, but it's like, no, it's like I could have handled this better. I could have spoken, maybe asked a better question, or realized that maybe this person's under stress and this is not the right time to have that conversation. And I know that was like, speaking of the video thing, I'd be like, Livy, just finish this video. Check out this video. And she's like in the middle of something. And it's like, she doesn't have the capacity for that right now. I should have been like, hey, I just made this video. I would really love to show it to you when you have the time.
Yeah.
And you have the space for it. And then she could have been like, awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, I'm programming for clients right now. Maybe at like 10 o'clock, you can show me.
Yes.
That just I just blew my own mind. That would have been nice if I knew that back then.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, I mean, now I would say one of the many reasons you're such a good communicator is because, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the differences now where you're at in your life is like you do ask those questions. Like even when things go great, okay, what could I have done better? And it's not to beat on yourself, and it's not to like just, be negative. It's like we can always improve. And it's, which goes to, I know we were talking before about, a bunch of reasons that people struggle with communication or things that hold them back. And one is they don't know how to take criticism, you know? And I think that so many people, they respond poorly because they just, you know, have an emotional response, right? Rather than taking a view of, okay, what is actually going on? What is actually being said?
Yeah. So, I mean, can you give me some examples, what you mean by that? Like, what's a situation where someone can't take criticism and how that blows up? And, you know, maybe, I don't know, if you can give an example of how it would go wrong and then how we could improve.
Yeah. I mean, we are kind of talking about relationships. You know, it's twofold. But, you know, Matt, if I just came up to you and I was like, Matt, you don't love me anymore, how would you respond? We talked about this earlier.
Yeah, we did. And of course, I'm at a different point in my life where now I'd be like, Taylor, what? Of course I love you, dude. Like, you know, I show affection and I tell you I love you all the time. And so I would be kind of very confused and I'd wonder why you would think that.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people in that scenario, right? If you think about any relationship that you've ever been, this is kind of a funny example. But we do love each other, so it's normal.
Should we kiss? Should we prove that we love each other by kissing on the lips?
Producer, can you help me out here?
He's pulling the cord.
Help. So going back to the example.
Okay. So we're not kissing.
We're not kissing.
Okay. Not yet. Sometimes a no is just a not yet.
This is definitely a no. I am communicating.
For now.
Forever and always. This is a no. Clear
2 words
communication.
you should always never ever say is always never. Never ever say never ever. McGruber.
That's almost the quote.
Yeah.
Before I was so rudely interrupted. So use a common example, right? Let's say there's a relationship, things are not going well, and they're not communicating well. A husband and a wife, we'll say. And all of a sudden, it just builds and it builds and it builds, and then all of a sudden, you know, the wife says, "You don't love me anymore." The odds are the husband is probably going to get defensive. Yeah. That's what I think most people would do and be like, "Are you kidding me? Of course I love you. I'm going to work every day. I'm like providing for this family or whatever." However, like you said, it's like if you come into a better space of like listening and hearing, right? So it's twofold where, you know, the husband in that example could come from a better space, but also the wife could be better and more accurate with her language, right? So she could say, you know, "Hey, you leave the house at 6 a.m. and you don't come home till 10 p.m. the last 3 weeks." But she's creating the narrative, and the story she's telling herself is like, that means he doesn't love her. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, there's multiple stories, and it gets out of control.
Yeah, so I think that's you mentioned it, notice, imagine, feel. Would you say this is a good leeway into that? And
yeah,
can you kind of describe what that looks like? Because I think that is the assumption where it's like, you're always late, and like, you know, I have dinner and you just don't give a shit. And it's like, well, are they always late? Or were they late 2 days this week out of 5 weekdays, you know? And
yeah, for sure. I would love to. So notice, imagine, feel is something that I teach with all my clients and in my course. And notice this is what we should do the most. We don't do this enough. Okay. So when we notice, these are the things that are inarguable. Okay. This is something everyone would agree on. So for example, Matt and I have headsets on. We're sitting on a couch. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. Matt has a Mets hat on, right? These are inarguable, right? We would not disagree, okay? And then when it comes to imagining, this is where we start creating a story, right? So typically, anytime you find yourself using the words "I think" or "I feel," that's a flag that you're creating a story, right? So an example I like to give a lot, right, is, you know, we could give an example of like at the gym, right? Let's say you're going through like the supermarket and you see this guy that is just like huge, muscle bound. He's got a tank top on, a mohawk, and just like 300 pounds of muscle. And you're like, wow, you notice that he's got a tank top on. You notice he's got a lot of muscle. You know, you notice that everything that in his cart, he's got chicken and rice and broccoli, and that's it. Then from there, you could imagine a lot of things, right? You could imagine that maybe he's not very smart. He's just some muscle-bound jock. Or you could imagine that
he's a douchebag.
He's a douchebag,
That was my
right?
first
He's
thought.
a bro. He's not a nice person, you know? But that may or may not be true, okay? Another example, and I think a lot of people could relate to this, is texting or email, right? So let's say you're texting someone, you know, maybe you went on a date recently, and I think we can all relate to this one. And you send a text and then you don't get a response. And
Oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
It's never happened to you, Matt.
This girl hates me. Never. I get
Yeah.
responses under 10 minutes every single time.
Everywhere, always.
Yeah. Always.
Babe magnet.
It's easy.
But for
manifest
some
it.
other people, so what you notice is you send a text, you did not get a response, right? You could even notice that like maybe normally you get responses at a regular interval. All of a sudden you imagine this person doesn't like you anymore, or you imagine that they're ghosting you, or you imagine that they're mad at you. However, you could also imagine that maybe their phone died. You could also imagine that maybe they have a work emergency. You could also imagine that maybe they got in a car accident. You could also imagine maybe they don't know what to say, right? Both are true. And so using this exercise, so what I would tell you to do is anytime you say I think or I feel, replace that with I imagine. And Matt, you've noticed something interesting about me. I've been doing this for a long time, and subconsciously now I get in the habit. So if you guys are listening to the podcast going forward, you will realize that I say imagine all the time.
Oh, me too.
And Matt
because
does
of
as
you.
well.
I don't
Yeah.
even say think.
Yeah.
I really don't think I use that word.
Yeah.
I think I don't say I think anymore.
I imagine that I don't say I think anymore.
Actually, no, I don't. As much.
Yeah, and so it's funny for me, Matt was actually the one that made this aware is every time I say I imagine, I would then pause. Mm-hmm. Because imagine is not typically in most people's vocabulary. It's not like a normal word that people use. So when you do that, it's going to, your brain's going to light up and you're like, oh, I'm saying imagine. I'm about to tell a story. It may or may not be true, right? So for me, it's funny, subconsciously, anytime I said imagine, I would pause because I had that aha moment of like, oh, this may or may not be true. And the cool thing is like you're going to better handle situations. You're going to realize that sometimes you're being crazy. And then you're also going to realize that like this may or may not be true, right? Like how many times have, Matt, you used to be an engineer and have a desk job, and I'm sure you sent lots of emails. And I'm sure you'd get emails and be like, fucking Karen again? Are you kidding me? She said this, but like you can't tell tone over text.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, screw engineering. That happens all the time over text.
True. Yeah.
That's why I love my audio messages. Or if I know I'm going to say something that might be like, if I'm trying to be fun and playful, I'm like, if you just read this, it might not come off that way. I'm like, but anyone who knows me knows I'm like not trying to be an asshole ever. So I will lean towards sending audio messages for that reason.
Yeah.
To help people imagine less.
Right. That's why emojis are great. Put a little winky face.
Dude, emojis are so good. I'm a psychopath with exclamation points. I exclamation point everything because I'm like, hey, how's it going? You having a good day? Everything's great over here. Best day ever. Or like all this shit. I'm like, because that's just like, I don't know. That's how I feel like I'm putting that tone on it. But, well, anyway. Tell me about feel. Notice, imagine, feel.
Yeah, so here's the last one. So we talk about our feelings, right? And this is, most of the time when we talk about feeling, people end up talking about emotions. So I want to separate sensations versus emotions, okay? So emotions are like happy, sad, angry, mad, right? And then sensations are like what you're actually feeling in the body. It's like the response that you have. So for example, if we go back to that, you went on a date or you were seeing somebody and then you're not getting a response, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, are they just ghosting me? Am I never and you're all upset. You might have a pit in your stomach. That's the sensation, right? And so a lot of people think that our thoughts create our feelings. And again, when I talk about feelings, I'm going to talk more about sensations, which then lead to emotions. But actually, your sensations can create your thoughts. So the first step is just becoming more aware of what are you feeling, right? So a lot of times when I'm working with clients and we're talking through things, or maybe we're doing story work, I'll ask them, like, what are you feeling? What's coming up for you? Like, do you have any sensations in the body? Do you have like a tightness in your chest or warmth, or, are your palms getting sweaty, right?
Knees weak, arms are heavy. Vomit on your sweater already.
Mom's spaghetti?
He's nervous. Let's stop.
Okay.
I don't want copyright infringement over here.
We were just getting started.
Dun, 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 dun,
Okay,
dun,
we'll move
dun,
on.
Dun, 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 dun. Who's still listening? Keep going, Taylor.
Welcome to my world, friends.
Best world ever.
Where was I?
You wouldn't have it any other way.
Sensations, emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, vomit on the sweater.
Okay.
Knees weak.
So for example, one of my favorite stories to tell is there's two women on a stage and they're about to give a speech in front of 10,000 people, this massive coliseum. And one woman turns to the other and says, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous." And the other woman says, oh, wow, like, what are you feeling? She's like, oh, I have this like pit in my stomach and like, you know, my palms are sweaty. And she's like, oh my gosh, wow. She's like, I am feeling the same thing, but like, I'm so excited. And so that's the thing, like nervousness and excitement are the same sensation in the body. It's all how you interpret it that gives you the emotion.
Dude, I was literally first at bat today, and it was a lefty, and I bat lefty. And if you know anything about baseball, basically it comes in at a different angle, so it's a little harder for a lefty hitter to hit off a lefty thrower. And he was throwing sidearm, so even coming at a more severe angle. And I'm like, man, I haven't faced a lefty in forever. And his first game, I'm like, it looks like he's throwing hard, at least from the dugout. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm all kind of nervous. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm excited. I'm like, this is the first at bat of the season. Baseball starting. I'm actually excited. I get to be challenged by a lefty pitcher, by a lefty sidearm pitcher today, and I'm going to fucking get a hit. So.
Did you get a hit?
Yeah. It was a little bloop. It was a 0-2 count. I blooped it. Got an RBI.
You got a hit. A hit's a hit.
Hit's a hit.
That's a great example, too. I grew up playing baseball, and, you know, I think I had like an 11 or 14 game hitting streak my senior year. And it was just like,
baby.
In the middle of that, I would get up to bat and I'm like, I know I'm going to get a hit.
Yeah.
I just like knew.
Yeah.
And then there'd be times where I'm like in a slump and I'm like, oh my God, just don't get out. This is going to affect your batting average. And like, it's embarrassing. The girl you got a crush on is in the stands. Like, and then sure enough, what do? I strike out.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why this is a whole nother conversation, but mindset in life, but also like in sports performance, like mental skills coach are becoming such a big thing.
Yeah.
Because it's how you choose to interpret it. And so
Justin Steele got the Rays? They won a World Series?
Yeah. Yeah. And he used to be with the Red Sox.
Yeah. But I mean, it's communication, right? That's the topic of this podcast. And that's internal communication, the dialogue you're telling yourself. Or again, same thing was happening in the outfield. And I love playing baseball now and implementing everything I've learned from you and just like mindset work and all this stuff to put it into baseball. Because again, it wasn't something I really played. I've been playing softball, but way less pressure. But I really hadn't played since high school. So like being able to like be in center field and be like, I'm a little rusty. Like this other team's really good hitters. And I'm like, oh, don't fuck up out here. I'm like, no. Don't say that. I'm like, give me the fucking ball because I'm going to make the play and I'm going to catch everything that comes my way and make a really good play. And it's having that conversation, standing on the mound when I'm pitching. It's like, cool, bad pitch, fine, whatever. Next pitch, let's take a breath and let's focus on this pitch that's happening right now. Don't worry about the last pitch or whatever. And it's just so fun to kind of play with that in a different setting than just like, you know, just normal life where I'm stressed out about work or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so Notice, Imagine, Feel is, like you said, it's one of my favorite tools to help people with their own internal dialogue and how they're interpreting the world, right? So it can help you better respond to things. But that's only like half the equation. You know, that's like, that'll help you better deal with situations, right? Like I even, you know, had an example with a client I was teaching and she was like, oh yeah, like me and my husband, we do this where like, if anyone's speeding, like, you know, people that are just like going 100 miles an hour, we always are like, well, she's like, I used to kind of have bad road rage. She's like, well, they must have to poop. And that's the story that they tell themselves. And it's like, you just don't know. And you could get all upset. But the other part of the equation is like when you communicate and how you can better communicate. And I know we were talking about, I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I know one thing we talked about was people don't know how to do it. It's a skill, right? And it's interesting because it's like whenever, like, I think people avoid hard conversations. They'd rather push stuff off than confront something or talk to somebody about something that's potentially hard.
Yeah, I think we might have talked about this on one of the podcasts, but it was that Instagram that was going around like, this could be hard, that can be hard, this could be that. Like life's hard no matter what.
Yeah.
And just to keep it within communication, it's like, yes, having that conversation is hard, but also not having that conversation is hard because if it's with your wife or husband or whatever, your good friend, that an issue comes up and you keep ignoring it, it's going to blow up one way or another. And probably in a not good time where you're both agitated and it's the straw that breaks the camel's back and you start yelling at each other. Where it's like if you just had the hard conversation, and I think this is kind of where we want to go with this is like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
But if you have that hard conversation, then you can clearly communicate what you want, what they want, what you expect, kind of what your needs are, so that you can move forward in a loving way.
Yeah.
Rather than letting it bubble over.
For sure. And that's where it's like the more that you communicate, the easier that it is. You know, and something we've talked about, I don't know that we necessarily have to dive into all of it, but there's a book called Nonviolent Communication. Highly recommend.
Yes.
It is.
Like everyone should read it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a top 5 book list that I think to be allowed to be a human, you should have to read these books. That's one of them. But there's like 4 principles. And the first is separate observation from evaluation, right? So that's kind of what we talked about, where it's like, that common example at the beginning is, or
Well, I like the example you had about the girl flirting with the girl.
yeah,
Say
yeah.
that one?
So a common example would be, maybe it's, say I'm at a party and it's the girl that I'm with. It's like, oh, I saw you flirting with that guy at the party. That's something I could say, right? That would be an evaluation. I am assuming I'm creating a story. Or I could say, oh, I saw you talking to that guy for over 40 minutes, just the two of you. And that would actually be an observation. That would be like the truth. And then I could have the conversation. Those are 2 very different statements.
Yeah, but what then? So then something needs to happen after that observation, right? Because you can't just say, saw you talking to that girl or that guy for 40 minutes at the party. It's like, yeah, and you're upset about this, aren't you?
Yeah.
So what
for
comes
sure.
next?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say like asking questions, just asking about it, right? And it's like, so, I mean, the second part of nonviolent communication is defining your feelings, right? So it's like opening up about how you're feeling. And ultimately, right, it's like, I mean, in that example, obviously, that person is feeling jealous, right?
Yeah.
Or upset. And I would imagine there's like a much deeper seated issues there, but
it's about how it's making you feel, and without any intention from the boyfriend for making the girl feel that way or whatever the relationship is. But it's like, this is how I feel, and it's not you. It's not like you're flirting with that girl. You're an asshole.
Yeah,
you're a bad boyfriend.
Well, and that's the key, right? So I believe the author's name is Marshall Rosenberg, and what he talks about is when you do define your feelings, stay away from things that are like, the other person is making you feel this way, right? So you can't say, I feel betrayed, or I feel, victimized, or things like that. It's right. It's like, perhaps what you could say is like, I feel sad when I see you talking to another guy, right? And that's just describing like actually how you're feeling, rather than like, you're making me feel this way. This is how I feel, right? Which then goes into the third principle, which is state your needs clearly, right? So if you feel sad, why does he feel sad? Well, maybe he doesn't feel like they spend enough time together, So state your needs clearly. It's like, oh, I would love to spend more time together, right? So in this example, it could be maybe that's like their date night and they only see each other once a week. So then he feels sad because it's like on that night. And then perhaps, the girlfriend doesn't even know that that's how he's feeling, right? But like a common example of like stating your needs clearly, right? So for him, it's like maybe his need is to feel loved, right? Okay, why does he need to feel loved? Because he feels alone, okay? So what does he want? He doesn't want to feel alone. But the thing is, you can't ask someone else to make you feel loved. But what you can do is ask someone else to spend time with you.
Yeah. Or it's like at that party, it's like, hey, that's fine. My request is that like every hour we can find each other and just kind of check in during the party, and that would make me feel good. Or like, just give me, maybe a whole fucking podcast about love languages, but it's like maybe your love language is physical touch. Like every hour throughout the party, I just want you to come up and like, grab my hand.
Yeah.
And just, as you're walking by or whatever, a little butt squeeze and keep going. And that would make me feel loved and less alone.
Do you need more butt squeezes, Matt? Is this
Dude, what is there like anyone who doesn't need more butt squeezes? Obviously from someone you love, not inappropriate
just
side grabbing at the side grabbing like on the sidewalk. Nobody needs that.
Okay.
But from you, yeah, I'll take more.
Glad we clarified. And then the fourth principle is ask, don't demand, right? And so ultimately, we talked about this at the beginning. It's like it's all how you approach it, and really, it's communicating more regularly. It becomes easier, and I think that's what I see so often is it's like the first time people in a relationship, friends, business, romantic, have a conversation, it has the potential to be hard, right? And what's interesting, like even you and I, right? It could be, we've talked about things with like even the podcast, and it's like, it's all about how you approach it. And, it's like, hey, I'm just throwing this out there. This is where I'm coming from. This is how I feel. you know, and we've communicated enough that like, if I were to say that, you'd be like, okay, cool. I'm just going to hear Taylor out. It doesn't mean that like, you know, this is automatically happening or that's automatically happening. But I think there's a tendency the first time you have that tough conversation, that's where it starts. Right. But again, it goes back to story work where it's like, you might be afraid to say something because you're afraid of how someone will respond. But like, if you never say it, there's no way that you can know.
Yeah. Well, now you're just making up stories. You think they're going to get mad at you. You don't know that.
Yeah.
They might be feeling the same way or would love to have this conversation. So I think that was like really great. Like that's like, if you feel there's issues with someone, I think this is a great way to communicate that and resolve those issues. How about like, do you have anything more to say about communication? Because I do. But I think just outside of that, where it's just like communication in general can just be such a good thing where I know I'm totally switching gears here, but like the way we coach, and you could probably get some stories on this too, but all the time, and I think I've written a post on this, or like I've written it, but it was too fucking long. So I was like, this needs to be in the email campaign. But anyway, so many times my clients come up to me and they're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Should I give my client this? I'm like, just go ask your client.
Yeah.
Just go ask them. And this is something I teach so I teach personal trainers, you know, how to develop an online program for 4 figures so that they can make more money and ultimately change more lives. And that's the main goal. But like to give them more freedom too, so they can live a life they, you know, deserve to have, because I believe personal trainers are saving lives. And anyway, so part of the biggest part of the process is we start developing this 4-figure offer, and you know, it's like, who's going to pay $2,000 for this 3-month program, whatever. I'm like, well, first of all, you know, you just bought mine and it's more than that. But I'm like, go talk to people and say, if I were to make a $2,000 program, what would have to be included for you to pay that much for a 90-day program? And that person goes, well, I don't know. Like I'd want workouts programmed and like nutrition plans. And like, I want you to Zoom FaceTime with me. Zoom FaceTime. It's 2 things into one. Just combining it. Mega video chat.
2 angles.
Yeah. I want you to walk through the grocery store with me and pick out groceries and help me shop. And on Monday nights, I want you to come over and give me a sponge bath. And that's always the joke I make. Like, obviously, no one's going to say that or would expect that. But if you talk to 10 people and 10 people say all those things, you should probably include those 10 things in your program. And then you can go back to them and be like, hey, you told me.
The Sponge Bath Business Accelerator.
Yeah, that's it, baby.
It's the new program.
But if 10 people say that, then include all that shit in your program and then go back to them and be like, hey, you said you'd pay $2,000 for this program. I did all of that. Here's the program. When do you want to start? And it's a little different than that conversation. But it's like, we just went out and asked. I don't know what to post today. Go ask your ideal client. Where do you struggle most with nutrition? I don't know. Like, I think I probably eat too much fast food. Okay, tell me about that. Well, like, yeah, on the way home from work, like I'm always grabbing whatever. Or I'm so busy with my kids, we're always stopping by McDonald's. And it's like, okay, great. That's a perfect, like, cool. Now you can make a post on how to help that parent not go to McDonald's. Start, you know, preparing meals or, you know, whatever that looks like, right? But it's like, you just go ask. Just go ask the client.
I love that example. And on that same vein.
Oh, yeah, baby. Penis.
Think about, you know, being in class as a kid, high school, college. And how many times have you thought, like, sorry, our producer is dying.
We lost our producer on that one. On that same vein. Get him every time.
The problem is Matt will do anything for a laugh, so it's likely that he's going to get on a roll here pretty soon.
Anything is very accurate with you're being accurate with your language. Yeah,
I'm great at communicating.
I'll do almost anything. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. Back to that same vein. So yeah, think about being in school or anywhere, you know, with a group of people, and someone is leading something and you have a question. And we've all thought it. We're like, I don't want to ask a stupid question. Mm-hmm. However, it's likely if you had that question, 10 other people have that question. And I know that happens right now. Most of my coaching is one-on-one. One of my previous programs was a group program. And it's like, it's so funny. Like one person would finally work up the courage and say it. And then everyone was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. I had the same question. I was like worried about it. And I'm sure, you know, that happens with you. And it's like, for some reason, people are just like afraid to ask, you know, and just communicate. And that's like, I mean, you want to talk about having better communication, but if you want to be more successful at whatever you do, ask more questions.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's a skill, and the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And this is like how I got started is, there's this thing called the curiosity game, where it's like actually a way to practice and get better, and you just ask questions. And it's like, and here's what I'll tell you to do. Next time you go to a party, you're with new people, and you meet someone new, just ask them as many questions as you can. Don't be weird about it. And like, the goal is for you to not talk that much. Obviously you can you'd be like, oh, no way, I grew up on the East Coast, blah, blah, blah. But like, just keep asking them questions.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen, 30 minutes is going to go by. You're going to leave the party. And then they're going to go home that night and be like, oh my God, Taylor? That was such great conversation. Taylor is, I love talking to him. And I'm going to go home and be like, wow, they didn't ask me anything.
Yeah.
Because people love talking about themselves.
Yeah.
And they love, but for me, it's actually fun. It's like a fun game now where like I'll go, I've been on a couple of like online dates, like Hinge or whatever. And immediately I'm like, I'm not really into this person. I'm like, cool. I've got 2 hours to like play the curiosity game.
Yeah. The dates are in person, by the way.
Yeah.
From online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, like, you want to get better at dating? Do that. Play the curiosity game. Ask better questions. Because just like you said, that person's going to go home and be like, wow, Taylor was so good to talk to. Like, so easy to talk to.
Works
and
every time.
We had a great conversation. And yeah, I mean, that's why I never get left on red. Left on red? What is it saying?
I don't know what you're saying.
When someone leaves you on red. It leaves you on red. Like, they read it and they leave it. They ghost you, basically.
Is that a saying?
It's in a song.
I don't know where we're at.
Leave me on red. Okay, I don't really know it. Okay, anyway. But yeah, asking better questions. It's you helped me with that. When we first met, and you made me do the curiosity game like with you, and it's a bit uncomfortable at first. But again, like Taylor said, like try it. It doesn't have to be weird. Like the curiosity game is, pick your wife, friend, whatever. 5 minutes, you can't say anything except ask a question. And like that's the game, right? Yeah. Obviously, you're not going to do that in person. You're not going to be a fucking weirdo and just be like, they ask you a question and you're like, nope, I'm just asking questions back, so I'm not going to answer. But like, yeah, don't be weird. But if you want to get practice in, that's a great way to do it. And you could do it with someone you're comfortable with. But man, asking questions, and that's like also too something I teach with sales. It's like no one ever tells you their first answer on anything is never, why do you want to lose 20 pounds? That first answer is never the real answer.
Yeah.
But if you keep asking questions, this is something I teach. I love this part of my sales process where it's like, you want to lose 20 pounds. Cool. What does losing 20 pounds get you? Well, if I lose 20 pounds, like, I don't know, I want to fit my wedding dress again, like 3 years ago. It's like, cool. What does fitting in your wedding dress get you? Oh, if I was fitting my wedding dress, like, that's when I felt really confident and really sexy and beautiful. And it's like, cool. If you were more confident and if you felt more sexy, what does that get you? And that's a tougher question. And people think, if I was more confident, if I was feeling more sexy, like, I don't know, I'd just be like showing up better in life. It's like, cool, like, describe that for me. What is showing up better in life like? Like at work? Like, yeah, I guess at work, like if I was more confident, I'm a salesperson, I would be landing more sales calls. And like, wow, that's cool. What would landing more sales calls get you? More money. What does more money get you? Oh, I could take my kids on those vacations. Or it's like, what is landing more sales calls? Well, I don't have to stay late because I'm not making sales calls. Now I'm making sales calls. I don't have to stay late. I can spend more time with my kids. It's like, oh, all of a sudden now we figured out that you don't give a shit about losing 20 pounds. Like, yeah, we do. And ultimately, that's what we say, right? Like, it's not the 20 pounds you want to lose. It's who you become along the way. And it's like, oh, but you actually, this is a nice free sales course for everyone right now. But you actually want more time with your kids and more money so you can take your kids on vacations and like share all this beautiful life with your kids instead of working so damn hard. It's like, that's what you really want. It's like, cool, I'm going to fucking get that for you. But all we did was ask questions.
Yeah.
And instead of just like, what do you want? We'll lose 20 pounds? Okay, cool. I think we can lose 20 pounds by 20 weeks. You want to pay $2,000 for that? No. Like, I'll pay the $20 at Vasa Fitness or whatever and like still never reach my goals. So just asking better questions can get you better answers.
Yeah, ultimately, if you want to be a better communicator, become a better listener. And one great way to be a better listener is to be curious. And I have a life mantra that guides me with everything. I let curiosity guide me. And just be curious.
Yeah.
And just ask questions. And the more you do it, the better that you'll get.
Yeah, ultimately people want to be seen and heard and understood. And a great way, and I think this is in Nonviolent Communication where he talks about active listening. You tell me, I want to lose 20 pounds because I don't feel confident. And then you say, okay, so what I'm hearing is that you want to lose 20 pounds and you want to feel more confident. And you said before, you feel like your nutrition, isn't on point and all this stuff. And you just repeat everything they said. And then what you're not doing is making up any stories. You give them the chance to, and then you ask, does all that sound accurate? Does all that sound correct? And you give them the chance to fill in the gaps or to correct you so that now you're on the same page. And now they're feeling seen, heard, and understood. And now they feel like you're someone to trust.
And what I love about this too is it's like a lot of times people just want to feel heard, right? So here you want to have better communication. Stop trying to be right.
Yeah.
So on that same topic, one of the other examples I love in the book he gives is, there's a guy who calls into a grocery store for, butter pecan ice cream, this specific butter pecan ice cream. Because they're out of it at this other store. They say, yes, we have it. Come on over. The store is like 20 minutes away, but just have to have the butter pecan ice cream. Shows up at the store. They don't have it. All of a sudden, somebody working at the grocery store walks down the aisle, and he's like, all upset. He's like, why don't you have this ice cream? I called. You said you had this ice cream. And the guy that works there handles it well, the way you should, with nonviolent communication. He's like, I'm so sorry, sir. He's like, so what I'm hearing is you're upset because we don't have the ice cream that you wanted. And he's like, yeah, you don't have it. And I called ahead. This is 20 minutes out of the way. And he's like, oh, wow. He's like, so, what I'm hearing is somebody here told you that we had that and now we don't. Like, that is incredibly frustrating. And he's like, yeah, it is really frustrating. And then he's like, oh, man. He's like, I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. Like, I'm going to try and find out, like, who that was. I don't know why they would tell you that. And he's like, yeah, it's just disappointing, but thank you for talking to me. And all of a sudden, conflict is gone, right? Yeah. Because they want to feel heard. And that's what you could interject any scenario at work with a boss, relationships, friendships, right? Instead of just like trying to be right, trying to prove your point, just say, hey, what I'm hearing is this. Keep repeating. And when they feel heard, that's all they want half the time.
Dude, I love that. That's kind of you can't tell people anything, really. They have to realize it themselves. You can't be like, you're wrong. This is the way it is. No one's going to change their mind. But if you ask better questions, and then maybe you can get them to see like, oh, yeah, I could see how like that's possible. And then you can start to change people's minds.
Yeah, and this is something that you teach so well is like this idea of ask for permission, right? So, and I know you talk about with like, sales calls, right? If you're on a call with someone and it's not really a sales call and then you feel like they'd be a good fit, you tend to ask, hey, do you mind if I tell you about my program? And then what happens? They're so much more receptive. And usually they're like, yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
But that way it's not like, oh, all of a sudden the call turned and Matt's now just trying to get my money.
Yeah. Well, actually, it starts at the beginning where you tell them straight up, hey, here's what we're going to do. You preface the call. Hey, this is like a nice this is communication, sales. Like, I mean, that's all.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Relationships.
So you go into the call and you say, hey, this is going to be about a 45-minute sales call. Or, I don't say sales call. I say, this is going to be about a 45-minute call. We're going to talk about where you're currently at and your future goals and vision. And if it sounds like a good fit, then we could talk about my program. We could talk about the pricing that you asked about. How does that sound? And they go, yeah, that sounds good. Now you're in control, for one, in the sales call. But they're also like, cool. I know exactly where this call is going, and he's going to tell me about his program later. Not like sitting on the call, and they're over there like, when is he going to sell me? I know he's going to fucking talk about his program at some point. It's like, yeah, I already told you I'm going to do it. And, yeah, it's just, I love sales. It's fun.
Yeah, just be so open. It's so funny you say that. Me and my college roommate, we had this one friend in our friends group who would always like send you that text that's like, hey, what are you up to this weekend? And just like, and my roommate used to get so mad because it's like, you knew he needed something. You knew he needed a favor. He's like, hey, what are you doing Thursday at 5:00? And it got to the point where we just knew. It was like, oh, you need help moving.
Yeah.
Oh, you need a ride from the airport. And it's like, dude, just ask. Yeah. But like my roommate would just be, and he's like the type of person that could not say no. So he's like, I don't know what to do, Taylor. Like if I respond and say nothing, then he knows I have nothing to do. But like at the same time, it's like, dude, just say, hey, I need a ride from the airport.
Yeah.
Do you have any availability? And so it's funny to this day, sometimes people will be like, hey, what are you up to? And I'm just like, what do you want?
It's like they're trying to trick you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're free. Oh, well, guess what? I need a ride to the airport. It's like,
yeah.
Like, fuck you, asshole. You
Yeah.
just tricked me.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
thought we were going to get beers. Yeah, I love that. I wanted to touch, like, just because this is prevalent and I think people can relate to it, but.
Oh, I thought you wanted to touch. Sorry.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
sure. I'll
just
take a
reaching
touch.
out.
All right, Taylor and I are touching right now. Thank you. Oh, you're so warm.
Yeah.
How do I feel?
My feet are sweating. I don't know if it's the Rhabdo or.
Oh, geez. I'm going to sit on them?
No.
Well, just my butt's
Not
warm,
even
so.
a little bit. What?
You're on the couch. I could sit on your feet. While
I said my feet are warm.
And then you can give me a back rub while I sit on your feet.
Okay, what
It's
did
like
you
a
want to touch
win-win.
on? I'm sorry I did this.
I don't know anymore.
I did this
do.
to me. I did this to me.
Yeah, you definitely did. Good language, good accurate language. I wanted to touch on, listening, asking better questions. People just want to be heard. 7.5 years in a relationship, and I couldn't figure that out. All Livy ever wanted to do, most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, was just to be fucking heard. But I, with my masculine energy, want to solve the goddamn problem.
Yeah, you're toxic.
Have you tried this?
masculinity.
Yeah, I'm like, have you tried this? Maybe you should talk to this person. Have you done this? Blah, blah, blah. And she would get so frustrated. I'm like, what? I'm like, just trying to have a conversation over here. But it's like, because she just wanted me to be like, yes, that is hard. I totally get that. It's so frustrating.
That's a great example. And again, this is not everyone, but I would say typical dynamic roles, like at least, in the US, is men try to solve things. They want to fix things. And then women just want to talk about things.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, asking questions, asking for permission is so important. So it's like, I've seen this play out with so many people that I know and so many like relationships that I've seen, but sometimes, women do want to solve stuff or like whatever it is. And so it's like,
nothing's black and white.
Yeah. But like, so in that example, you could be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like, what are you thinking? And then you keep having the conversation. Then maybe at some point it's like, are you interested in like, brainstorming ideas of how to get out of that?
Yes, I love that.
And
I even heard
then-
the thing like before the conversation starts. Okay, I can see you're kind of upset. Like, what do you want from me right now? You want me to just listen and support you, or do you want me to help solve this problem?
Yeah.
And you just be like, no, just let me vent and just listen. It's like, cool, I'm here for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Man, this has been great. We've covered
Lovely.
so much.
This is as good as I thought it was
I feel
going to
like
go. Better, I'd say.
Yeah.
I had no doubt about that.
Yeah, we should wrap this thing up. So, any last thoughts? You want to put a bow in this?
Last thoughts? I don't think so. Just like with anything in life, we say happiness is a choice. It's a practice. So don't get frustrated if this doesn't work or it's difficult or, I don't know. I would also challenge you. Play the curiosity game, 5 minutes. Have that conversation that you really don't want to have. Maybe read Nonviolent Communication first. Get some practice in and then do it, or just do it.
Yeah, to tie this all together, I got one tip for you to implement right away. And this is stealing a little bit from what you teach your clients, Matt, on Instagram. When they're new to posting on Instagram and they're like afraid, they're like, oh, but I never post about fitness. What are all my followers going to think? And you're like, cool, tell them, hey guys, you're going to start seeing a lot more of this. And you preface that, right? Same way. If there's some hard conversations you want to have or people that you want to communicate better with, start the conversation by saying, hey, I'm really working on getting better at communication. Would you mind if I fill in the blank?
Yeah.
And then of course they're going to be receptive.
I love that. I love even starting that conversation with like, hey, this is about to be a difficult conversation, but I really need to talk to you about something. Now they're just like, oh, okay. And again, I think going back to like before you do that, is this a good time to have a difficult conversation?
Yeah.
Make sure they're in a good headspace just because you are doesn't mean they are. So I love that, Taylor. That was wonderful. So wonderful.
Perfect. This was great.
Guys, thanks so much for
Such a good
joining
time.
us. Oh my God. We love you being here. I can feel your energy, even though you haven't even listened to this yet. But I love it. I love you guys. Honestly, your support means so much. When you guys share stuff on Instagram, it means so much. Podcast is interesting because you don't know who's listening. We see our downloads per month or whatever per episode, but we don't know who you are. So when you share stuff on Instagram, it's so awesome to be able to connect with you guys and just feel the love, and we appreciate that so much.
Yeah, sounds cheesy, but we wouldn't be here without you guys, so thanks.
Yeah. Amen, dude. All right, we're out of here. Until next time, peace.